The rain poured hard that night, a steady drumbeat against the mansion's glass windows, as Emily sat on the marble steps with her hands wrapped around her swollen belly. Her breath came in uneven tremors, her eyes swollen from hours of crying, yet her tears refused to stop. The man she had built her entire world around, the man whose laughter had once been her favorite sound, had left. Not just left the house, but left her heart, her future, and the family growing inside her. She was 7 months pregnant, fragile and exhausted, and yet Adrian Sinclair, her husband, the man who once swore to protect her, had walked away without turning back. The silence he left behind was louder than thunder, echoing through every corner of the home that now felt like a stranger's palace. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in stories that prove life has a way of rewriting even the darkest chapters, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel, Royal Stories. Your support helps us bring you more heart-touching stories like this one. Emily had not been born into wealth. Her childhood was modest, raised by hardworking parents who taught her that love and kindness were the truest forms of treasure. She worked at a small bookstore in her 20s, stacking shelves and recommending novels to the few customers who wandered in. That was where she first met Adrian Sinclair. He was already a millionaire, the heir to a thriving real estate empire, dressed in a sharp navy suit that contrasted with the dust-stained counters of her little shop. But what caught her off guard that day wasn't his presence, it was his smile, warm, curious, disarmingly human. He had asked about a novel, but his eyes lingered on her longer than necessary. In the weeks that followed, Adrian kept returning to the bookstore. Sometimes he bought books he never read, sometimes he simply stood by the counter asking about her day. Emily, shy but kind, slowly found herself drawn into his orbit. It wasn't the luxury cars that impressed her, nor the credit card slips he signed with a flick of his wrist. It was the way he listened, the way he seemed to care about her thoughts, the way he laughed at her dry humor. Their worlds could not have been more different, yet when he looked at her, she felt seen in a way she never had before. Against all odds, love blossomed. Within a year, Adrian proposed in the most unexpected way, not at a gala or a grand event, but in the bookstore where they first met. He knelt among shelves of forgotten novels, holding a ring that sparkled under the dusty lights. Emily, overwhelmed, said yes through tears. She believed then, with all her heart, that fairy tales could be real. Their wedding was lavish, the kind written about in magazines. She remembered the cameras flashing, the endless bouquets of white roses, the way Adrian whispered promises into her ear as they danced under a ceiling of chandeliers. But beyond the glitter, she held on to the simplicity of their bond. She thought their marriage would be a blend of luxury and love, an adventure where she would always be his anchor. For a time, it was. Adrian came home with flowers, took her on surprise getaways, and held her close at night. They dreamed of children, a house filled with laughter. Emily devoted herself not only to him but to his world, learning the rhythms of charity galas and boardroom dinners, even though she felt out of place. She supported him quietly, always believing he was hers as much as she was his. But wealth has a way of eroding foundations. As Adrian's empire expanded, his time at home diminished. Business trips grew longer, parties became grander, and his circle filled with celebrities, models, and people who thrived under flashing lights. Emily, preferring quiet nights and simple joys, found herself slipping into the shadows of his new world. Yet she clung to hope, especially when she discovered she was pregnant. That moment was one of pure joy. She remembered holding the ultrasound picture against her chest, imagining Adrian's reaction. She planned to surprise him at dinner, picturing his eyes lighting up, his arms wrapping around her, his voice trembling with excitement. She thought a child would bring them closer, remind him of the life they had once dreamed of. But when she told him, his reaction was muted, distracted. He kissed her forehead, smiled faintly, but then answered a phone call that pulled him away. The call lasted hours. She sat at the table alone, staring at the untouched food, the ultrasound phone trembling in her hands. The distance between them grew with each passing day. Adrian missed doctor's appointments, canceled dinner dates, and stayed out late at events she was never invited to. The perfume on his suit one evening was her breaking point. It wasn't hers. It was sweet, heavy, foreign. She asked him where he had been, and instead of reassuring her, he sighed with exhaustion, as though her concern was a burden. The confession came days later. His voice was cold, his words deliberate. He told her he had fallen in love with someone else. A model named Celine, whose face graced magazine covers, whose beauty turned heads wherever she went. He told her their connection was different, that he couldn't deny what he felt. Emily stood frozen, her hand instinctively on her belly, as if shielding her unborn children from the cruelty of his words. She begged him not to abandon their family, but his mind was made up. That night, Adrian packed a suitcase and left, walking out into the rain without once looking back. Emily's world collapsed. She went through pregnancy alone, her body racked with exhaustion, her heart hollow with grief. The nights were endless, filled with the sound of rain against the windows and the ache of loneliness pressing on her chest. She prayed for strength, for her babies, for the will to keep going. Months later she gave birth not to one child, but to 4 quadruplets. 2 boys, 2 girls, a rare miracle. Her body was weak, her energy drained, yet when she saw their tiny faces, something inside her reignited. The betrayal had nearly broken her, but their existence stitched her heart back together. She whispered promises to them in the hospital room, promises that she would never leave them, never let them feel unloved, never let them suffer for the choices of others. But even as she built her life around her children, the world around her celebrated Adrian's new romance. Newspapers hailed his engagement to Celine as a fairy tale love story. The city buzzed with excitement about the upcoming wedding. The millionaire and the model, the perfect couple. Each headline was a knife twisting deeper into Emily's chest. Yet instead of destroying her, it fueled her resolve. She realized she would not hide, she would not be erased. Her children deserved to be seen, and so did she. The day of the wedding arrived with the kind of fanfare that only immense wealth and fame could command. The city itself seemed to pause, as if the very streets had been polished for the occasion. Towering floral arches framed the cathedral, rare orchids and roses flown in from across the globe. Photographers lined the pathways, their cameras poised like hunters waiting for prey. Luxury cars rolled up one by one, carrying guests draped in designer gowns and suits worth fortunes. The media called it the wedding of the decade. Headlines gushed about Adrian Sinclair, the handsome millionaire who had finally found true love, with the radiant model Celine, who seemed to float above the ground with her every step. Emily sat miles away from the glamour, in her modest home, watching the coverage flicker across the television. Her quadruplets played on the carpet nearby, their laughter soft but grounding. She traced their tiny faces with her eyes, marveling at how much they resembled their father. The same curve of the chin, the same eyes that seemed to glow with mischief. She felt an ache, but not of jealousy. It was of injustice, of truth hidden away. They were his children too, and yet the world celebrated his fairy tale as if his past had never existed. For weeks she had battled with herself. Should she go? Should she stay home, raise her children quietly, and let him rewrite history? Or should she show the world, and him, what he had walked away from? That morning, as she dressed her little ones in matching ivory outfits, she realized her choice had already been made. She was not going for revenge, nor to ruin. She was going to stand in her truth. The limo arrived, sleek and shining under the afternoon sun. It was a friend's gesture, a symbol of support, and when Emily stepped inside with her 4 children, she felt the weight of the moment settle on her shoulders. The drive to the cathedral was long, the city buzzing with celebration. She could almost hear the murmur of guests inside, the clinking of champagne glasses, the rustle of expensive silk gowns. Yet inside the limo, there was only the sound of her babies' soft giggles, their little hands clutching hers, as though anchoring her to her courage. The limo slowed as it approached the cathedral steps. Outside, reporters craned their necks, flashing cameras at every arriving car. When the white vehicle came to a halt, the crowd hushed, curiosity sparking like wildfire. Slowly, the door opened, and Emily stepped out. Her dress was not couture, yet it flowed with a quiet grace, a soft pastel fabric that caught the breeze. Her hair, styled in loose waves, framed her face, glowing not from cosmetics, but from the strength carved by suffering and survival. For a moment, the crowd didn't recognize her. But when 4 small children emerged behind her, gasps rippled like a wave through the air. They were adorable in their tiny suits and dresses, their little hands linked together as they tried to balance on the grand stone steps. The resemblance was undeniable. Adrian Sinclair's children. His forgotten family, his blood standing before the world. The cameras exploded with flashes, reporter whispered frantically, and guests paused mid-conversation, stunned. The bride had not yet arrived, yet already the wedding had been upstaged. Inside the cathedral, the atmosphere shifted. Musicians faltered, their violins trembling on notes they could no longer hold. Guests turned their heads toward the entrance, whispers rising like a tide. And then Adrian saw her. His smile, rehearsed and perfect for the cameras, froze. His eyes widened, his breath hitched. Emily stood in the doorway, poised and dignified. Her children clustered around her like a living testament to everything he had abandoned. Celine, radiant in her gown, felt the shift too. The sparkle in her eyes dimmed as she followed Adrian's gaze and saw not just a woman, but 4 children who mirrored the man she was about to marry. Her confidence cracked, the fairy tale faltering before it had even begun. Emily didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her silence was louder than any outcry. She walked slowly down the aisle, her children's small footsteps echoing against the marble floor. The guests parted instinctively, some out of shock, others out of quiet respect. All eyes followed her, the whispers deafening now. Adrian's hand, which had moments earlier been resting on Celine's, fell to his side, limp and uncertain. When she reached the front, she stopped, her eyes locking with his. In that gaze was everything: the love she had once given, the betrayal she had endured, the pain of raising his children alone, and the strength that had carried her through. For a long, unbearable moment, Adrian said nothing. His lips parted, but no words came. He was not the powerful millionaire now. He was a man undone, stripped of pretense, facing the truth he had tried to bury. The guests waited, holding their breath, as the tension thickened. Emily's children tugged gently at her dress, their innocent eyes wide, unaware of the storm around them. And still, she said nothing. She turned, guiding her little ones toward the exit, her chin lifted high. That silence was her triumph. She hadn't come to scream or to beg. She had come to show. To remind him, and the world, of what love, loyalty, and family looked like. To prove that though he had tried to erase her, she remained unshaken, her dignity intact. As she left, the cameras followed, capturing the image that would dominate headlines the next day: Emily, radiant and composed, stepping into a white limo with 4 children who bore Adrian Sinclair's name in their very faces. Behind her, the cathedral was no longer filled with joy, but with chaos. Guests whispered, some in sympathy, others in judgment. Celine stood rigid, her hands trembling. And Adrian, he collapsed into his seat, his head in his hands, realizing too late what he had lost. Emily never looked back. As the limo pulled away, her children laughed and clapped, oblivious to the spectacle they had just been part of. She smiled softly, kissing the tops of their heads. She wasn't leaving with riches, or applause, or revenge. She was leaving with something far more powerful: her family, her truth, her dignity. That night, the world erupted with stories. The media replayed the footage endlessly. The millionaire's wedding had been overshadowed by the wife he left behind, and the quadruplets he never claimed. Public sympathy poured toward Emily, while Adrian's image crumbled under the weight of his choices. Celine withdrew from the spotlight, unable to withstand the scrutiny. The fairy tale was shattered, but Emily's quiet act of courage became legend. In the limo's quiet hum, Emily whispered to her children. "We don't need him," she said softly. "We have each other, and that is enough." And in that moment, it was.